I saw come out of Haiti was a need for getting geospatial awareness of what locations are damaged, being able to rapidly assess what one can do, and then create relationships between people about location and what can be done around location. Taking that sort of out of the abstract, it was, where are their comms? Where's their power? How do we know where injured people are? How do we get work, supplies, and people in there to help address those problems? The geospatial component of this, there's a collection problem. There's the processing problem, getting the raw data into a format that can go into a collective intelligence of some kind, or to a crowd, or to even just another center. There's the problem of then making sense out of all of that and compiling other data sets so you can start understanding what's going on. And there's the distribution and communication problem, how you get it back out and useful. In terms of crisis map, what we could do now is infinitely more than what we could do for the tsunami, or even for Katrina. But I imagine we could do a lot more than what we did for Haiti.
For as far as processing, we thought of trying to set up something like SETI at home equivalent for the crisis. So, there's also some kind of astronomical thing, or not astronomical, some medical thing. I think it's also using the SETI at home model.
Stanford, yeah.
Stanford.
Or protein folding.
Protein folding, that's the one, yeah. And it was some medical thing using that same idea.
It would be really interesting to phrase it as such and to look at what kind of surge capacity could such a capability generate.
Right.
Is CPU time really an issue, though? I mean,
I don't think CPU time is
well, let's see.
Is there anything that's like that, though? I mean, there's nothing that I can see.
How much data are we talking about? The thing is, I have no idea how much data.
The data is so qualitative that you have to have people touching it, thinking about it, and then there's all these political issues. Like, I feel like we're at a plateau where until political issues and user experience issues are solved, we're not really going to see a capacity reach a greater role for citizens. It's going to take really sophisticated design and probably a really frustratingly slow process of integrating with the culture of, like say, World Food Program, like what's it going to take to change their like 3-decade logistics process? They're going to do it themselves. So I would love to find something that was a simple like SETI at home thing where I just run it in the background, but it's probably going to look a lot more complicated than that. And what we've seen with trying to design a Swift, this piece of software for Ushahidi to try to have a crowdsourced design on validating reports. What the problem we had been brainstorming about how to do a contest, and we had to abort it basically or put it off because it's like, well, how do you have conditions that could be met? We don't have a goal of something like CPU or there's no outer space that you reach, and it's like, oh, you win. It's so intangible and so cultural that I think
that's one thing I've noticed is that I don't see that a lot of, apparently, from my understanding, is that development programs don't tend to talk to like anthropologists. Somebody who could actually interpret the culture that you're working with. Get somebody who's a specialist, whether it's Egypt or Haiti or Burma or whatever, Myanmar or whatever, China, whatever. Get somebody who's a specialist in that area and knows your culture as well, so can talk to people from when setting up the project. So that's something. Being from an anthropologist background, it's like cultures work very differently, and aid programs, at least up until when I was a while ago when I went to school, were very infamous for not trying to understand the culture that they're working with.
This was something that was a bit of a sea change with Haiti, because we started doing the exact same process, and then the Haitian diaspora got more and more involved. The applications that really succeeded integrated with the Haitian diaspora, like Chris, you had with Ushahidi, you have a partnership there. They got 10,000 translators within the first 4 days. They were able, from that, to start looking at how do you integrate those conversations, those cultural conversations, into other designs of other processes. And we haven't really succeeded at that anywhere near as well as we have with the translation problem. Some method of integrating with diasporas there are many cultures. Let's just, the United States has a huge diaspora, but we are not the only immigrant country on the planet. And we're becoming more and more so that there are large diasporas spread across the country. If you look at Dubai, you will find an innumerable number of Nepalese and other folks from Asia in there in working capacities that fly back and home and send remittances. There are, I don't know how many cases of that type of work where we can harness people that are actually away from the disaster and have capacity and ability to translate.
Especially when they're away, they presumably picked up some of the host country's culture and therefore can talk to people from the host country in a way to make it understandable to them within the context of their culture.
Or begin to understand it just international perspective and take that knowledge and apply it to whatever countries are having the biggest influence on that response. It may be China that has the biggest influence on the response at some point in the not too distant future. So how can we, I mean, that type of application, personally, this is sort of in your area.
Yeah, it's like none of it really has a solvable air to it to me. Like I have trouble seeing like how we could have something that would be solvable by a contest, which requires that we have a clear definition of success, and thus like requires that there's this like competitive aspect that can be done like non-collaboratively. Like I'm thinking of like the Netflix prize, where you have people who are all working on a shared data set. And they're trying to achieve an extra like 5% of success in a known environment, where you have you can introduce an algorithm and then be able to see whether or not it wins, whether or not it goes the extra distance.
And you can write a paper at the end.
Or the MATLAB
do.
challenges.
Yeah.
Or you would have to take something that is like, I mean, what sort of always happens in a crisis is usually something happens to communications, doesn't it? Somewhere along the line, it's like, otherwise it's not, you know, I mean, it's not that, almost all of them, they're characterized by that, so you'd have to take something like that and everyone would have to look locally from their own point of view. What happens, I mean, you could have people, you could have entrants from, you know, wherever in the world saying, this is how, when communications is gone, this community has decided to solve it, and it could be low-tech ways, high-tech ways. So, I mean, again, from the Lunar X thing, I totally agree with you that even with that, with the moon, where you've got somewhere to go, most of the Lunar X thing is about proving you've done it, having this grand old video camera, and also the whole publicity machine that they want to go along with it. So almost everything you'd solve, because in space, the main thing to solve is weight. Weight determines innovation, right? So they've packed you up with weight, which is all about proving that you've won. So, you know, I think that you can't sort of have a goal that does that to you, but you could perhaps have communities, and maybe it would have to be a distributed prize, wouldn't it? So that you didn't have one big prize that maybe everyone's a winner.
I mean, like what Google is doing, awarding, you know, some community with the gigabit Ethernet or whatever, and you know, that kind of a prize. Or in the Weather Service, I know they have these things like Storm Ready, that you have a community that's storm ready, or is there quake ready, or maybe that's the aspect you have to go after, the community, and have them all work to get it together, like they did for trying to get the Ethernet or fast Ethernet. So anyway.
How would it work?
It's interesting to hear your perspective coming from the recent Haiti incident or disaster, whatever you want to call it. But I'm not trying to downplay the cultural issues you mentioned in terms of communicating to people who are there, the way that they understand, believe it. But I think that depending where on the map this disaster happens, if it's in in a remote island or something, it's going to be totally different than if it's in a major country or a major city or in a rural area. So I mean, to generate a contest from it or a challenge, and having some measurable results seems like that's really problematic. I'm thinking more if there's other dimensions to this issue that might be better measured or quantified. And I'm also thinking about some of my experiences in digital elevation mapping, and I saw a lot of